All right, good evening. It is 5:30. I'd like to call to order our regular meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. Please stand and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next, I would look for a motion to approve our agenda. Yes, Mr. Johnson.
I'll move approval of the agenda with the addition of the human capital addendum that was located at our workstation to be added to item 6B on the consent agenda.
Second. All right, moved by Mr. Johnson and seconded by Dr. Newman. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries, and we will move on to our recognition of the audience. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who is signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. This evening, one speaker has signed up to address the board. This speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker is asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of the speaker's time at the podium. I will now call our speaker to the podium, who is Devin Stachinsky.
I'll have to make this quick because there's a lot to go through. First, Memo 113. It really begs a question that was asked of you a couple years ago. Are you guys segregating all the troubled kids over to the Explorer Academy? Because that's really what continual action is suggesting. But I'd like to get to the meat and potatoes of tonight. Here in my hand, I have a document handed to me by a teacher who also said, please do not share my name for fear of reprisal, a going theme. And this document has some very concerning pieces to it. It is your gender inclusion packet, which is 30-some pages long. In your part that says building a gender inclusive support team, it lists student wellness, family facilitator. However, there are multiple points in this document that say don't involve the family if the student says so. However, one of the parts in here says the communication plan will not be kept in the student's cumulative file. So where are the forms in this document being held if they're not going into the student's file? Just a question. Also, school personnel should be aware that informing other individuals without the permission of the student could lead to potentially harmful incidents, such as being removed from the home or being disowned. How could you possibly know that without investigation from like Child Protective Services? You can't possibly make that decision. You are a school, not Child Protective Services. You use Project Ray. I really hope you don't if Kristen Nelson gets elected, because that's a conflict of interest. Your form in here has very misleading, two of your forms in here have very misleading language. Are parents guardians aware of and supportive of their child's updated gender? Now, that's two separate questions. That should be two separate line items. Are the parents aware? Yes or no. Then, are they supportive? Yes or no. Because it leads the student to give you a specific answer with that and qualifier in there. So, Century Code and CFR Title 45. Very much disagree with this.
Thank you. We'll move on to our report section of the agenda, and I would look to the FEA, Mr. Kraft, for a report.
Good evening, President Birkeland and members of the board. This past weekend, we had the opportunity from FEA to send some delegates or representatives of our organization to Bismarck for the North Dakota United Delegate Assembly. Fancy title for what is essentially the organization's business meeting. At that, we also elect officers to serve on the North Dakota United Board of Directors. And I'm pleased to be able to share that one of our own, Michelle Strand, was elected to serve as the representative for schools with greater than 600 members representing them. So that was exciting. It was a competitive election, but Fargo is well represented on the board of directors for North Dakota United. Happening before the next board meeting will be Teacher Appreciation Week, which is May 6th through 10th. And our approach from Fargo EA will be to celebrate all educators during that week, not just teachers. We know that every person who wakes up each day ready to serve our students deserves appreciation, and so that's what we'll look to do during the week that is technically titled Teacher Appreciation Week. We'll look to make it Educator Appreciation Week and involve all educators in our schools. So that's May 6th through 10th, coming up very quickly before your next meeting. We're also working to create a retirement social to celebrate the FEA retirees from Fargo Public Schools and honor their lengthy experiences in the district. And then we're working with West Fargo to create a social event for our members to get together this spring as well as we wrap up the school year. So some kind of fun things coming forward as well. There's one business item on your agenda that I'd like to address, and that's the calendar. You're set to approve the 2025-2026 school year calendar tonight. We presented the 3 drafts that the committee had created to FEA members, and the draft that's in front of you did score the highest amongst FEA members who voted on our survey. It was a close vote, but democracy works on margins. And so that is the draft that was supported by the majority of the FEA members who reached back out to us when we asked for their input on the survey. There is one last opportunity for me here to advocate on behalf of the FEA reps who serve on the calendar committee, and that's about EL 14, which is attached within your memo. EL 14 continues to be far too restrictive, and it does not provide the calendar committee the kind of flexibility that they should have as a committee to make some decisions and to try to come up with creative approaches for the way that we approach our calendar in the district, to give you something perhaps that's outside of the typical boxes for you to consider. So I continue to advocate that EL 14 is something that the board needs to look at and consider removing some of the restrictions that are put on the calendar committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our administration report, Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you. I do have a just brief presentation here, so I'll just connect real quick. So I think at the last board meeting, I had quite an extensive presentation in response to our recent human capital survey and how we go about decision-making moving forward in Fargo Public Schools. And there was quite a lengthy presentation using a lot of some specific examples. And the reason for doing that was twofold. One is just to provide clarity, like we talked about, to our staff on what are ultimate drivers for how we make decisions within our organization, especially when we have different perspectives, and everyone does, on what education should look like and how education should be. But then the second piece was also just for board members to be aware that there will always be different perspectives on what education looks like or how education should be that might try to divert our focus from the outcomes that we are trying to utilize we're trying to achieve as a district. And we're going to continue focusing on those outcomes. And there was just a recent example this week that I wanted to kind of highlight, going back through some components of like what I shared last week, which is we have this unified strategic and operational plan that is really the ultimate measures of how we are going to define success in Fargo Public Schools, and we know that. And within that plan, we have some very granular, specific targets of key metrics that we are trying to look at and trying to make reasonable progress towards, that we use as our guiding principle for how we want to deliver education and how we make the decisions that we do. One of the pieces of information I shared last week was to the board and to the FEA that also said that when you have a conflict in how education works, we have to be able to use that achievement towards a unified and strategic and operational plan to evaluate what's the best path for moving forward for our organization. Because without that, you're going to be in this constant state of conflict between how you think education should be delivered or what that experience should be for students versus someone else. But also, when you have that conflict, it's not fair for our staff. If, for example, if the FEA is advocating for a principle or a practice that really doesn't lend itself to work towards achieving the measures that we want, then our staff are then put in this different situation where the association that they chose to be part of for their own representation is advocating for something that's different than how you as a board are monitoring progress and how that gets cascaded down to their employees as well. And specifically, we talked about some of this contempt and resentment builds when you have like a preservation of practice versus outcomes, or a preservation of a certain experience or preservation of a certain principle. I think that remote working is a principle or an experience that some people may have a different thought on. And one of the things that we talked about last week was moving forward, our decisions as an organization are going to be based on achieving the measures of our strategic plan. And that's going to be more important than preserving a consistency in practice because we value those student outcomes first. That's going to be more important than providing a specific experience unless it's been highlighted by the board through the strategic plan development or through an EL, but then also over enforcing specific principles. I think it's no secret that over the weekend we had a front page article on Saturday's newspaper focusing on some of our employees that we have actually started offering the opportunity to work remotely. Since that article, and even before then, we've gotten multiple inquiries from even the FEA on certain different aspects of this, specifically for the purpose of kind of highlighting that we are doing something bad for providing a remote working opportunity for some of our employees. I actually think that that's a celebration. And I hope that, though I don't believe that was the intent of the article, was that the rest of our community and our staff recognize that we are willing to be an organization that's willing to provide, as long as we are working towards getting the outcomes that we want for our students, flexible working environments when it is appropriate and in the situations that it is. So I think part of the article, as you can see, the title was Fargo Public Schools is alone in the metro in offering a remote and out-of-state work. And I think there's a couple pieces that I wanted to highlight. As you can see from the graphic in front of you, we have a remote work policy that allows individuals to work fully remote, that allows individuals to work hybrid. We have some virtual academy individuals and then also some contracted work for areas that we weren't able to fill. But what made me most excited about this article was just the measure of success. So specifically, the article focused on two of our senior leaders in our organization, Mr. Love and Dr. McKenna, who's part of our cabinet team as well, where both of them are quoted using the measures of success that we've identified as a district, which is, it does, for me, this conversation about whether or not remote working is a practice that should be utilized or not, whether it's irrelevant, because at the end of the day, what matters and what drives our success is, are we working towards achieving those outcomes? As you can see with Tristan Love, the most important thing for him, as he quoted on his own to the reporter, is he's making reasonable progress towards the strategic initiative he's responsible for. Dr. McKenna said, doesn't matter where I am if I'm getting the work done. Going back to how we make decisions in Fargo Public Schools, we go back to the results that we are trying to achieve. So it's easy for people to take this as news you can use to villainize maybe administration or our practices. But at the end of the day, we're going to continue working as an organization based on the two results that you see on the bottom that you're monitoring, because what we utilize is our decision-making isn't based on what other individuals may think that education should be or the practices that should be employed as an organization, because we serve 11,000 students, we have 3,600 employees. You're going to have a variety of differences in how people think education should be. Our standard is, are we making progress towards towards the results that we are monitoring. And if we are, then if the board doesn't like the strategies that we're utilizing, then they can limit those strategies through ELs. They can limit those strategies through the strategic plan. But everything else then just becomes an irrelevant argument. And part of the reason that I wanted to address this today is because I think there are some things as a society that we need to be able to accept and acknowledge. And part of that is also not allowing things to not calling some things for what they are. And I'll just put it this way. I think one of the things that really bothered me through this article wasn't the fact that people are questioning our remote work policy or hybrid policy. There's some very specific things that I think that need to be addressed. One is, why is this conversation happening now? Specifically, why is this conversation happening after Mr. Love started, when every piece of information that's on your slides in front of you is directly quoted from the paper? We've had a remote and hybrid work policy well before either of those two individuals were hired. In fact, that remote policy was employed by Mr. Love's predecessor. So why is that conversation happening now? I don't have enough information to say that race is a factor, but I do have enough information to say it is. Someone can reasonably expect that's a consideration when we've been employing a practice in our district for a very long time. We've had other employees that have been doing it for almost a year, but yet it becomes a negative practice that we are using that's highlighted after one specific individual has been hired. And I think we owe our community to have that conversation to say, why is that happening now? But then the second piece is, why keep going, right? Like, why do we keep having this argument of whether this is a fair practice or not, when what we should be focusing on is, are we making progress towards our students? That should be the standard for how we make those decisions. And I don't think it's fair for employees to have to defend their family situations, their family's medical situations, to the level that some of our employees did, solely because we made the choice as an employer to hire them to do a job. And at the end of the day, their job should not have to involve sharing all of their personal information in a defense mechanism because some people don't question it. I think we as their employer owe it to all of our staff to be able to say they're hired to do the job and we're going to monitor their progress, and if they're doing their job, then that's it. And every other part of the conversation is not relevant. But then lastly, if you read the article, Mr. Love specifically talks about being a father first. And while some people want to spin this in a negative way, isn't that the identity that we do want for our organization? Don't we want to attract future employers that recognize that we want to be family oriented, that if you're getting the job done and you have the capacity and your employer's okay with you working in a remote or hybrid capacity, the most important piece is achieving the outcomes that we want for our students. And if you're able to do that and also spend more time with your family because of some specific situations that were highlighted in the article, that's the employer of choice that we want to be. So to me, I think sometimes we can have some of these conversations that derail us in a different way, but it's also important to go back to what are the most important factors in how we make decisions and what's that identity you want in the organization. Because to me, it comes back down to these specific measures. These are measures that you're utilizing to monitor progress in Fargo Public Schools. These are measures about how fast we fill our vacancies with certified staff. These are measures about making sure that our staff are satisfied in terms of their employee culture and climate, specific things that we're looking at. When we look at our profession in education, the amount of decline that we have in future teachers, I hope that we continue to identify as a forward-thinking organization where we can attract individuals and say, the future of education may look different. I don't know what education is going to look like 20 years from now, but we are not going to be so stagnated that we care more about a practice of education that we believe in over actually just making progress. And if making progress for our students and the outcomes that we're delivering for them can be done in a different way that I can't even think of today or fathom today, then we should be the organization that attracts that, because that is what's going to be the main set of attraction for our future educators that are probably sitting in high schools today or elementary schools today as well. And I hope that we're able to do that. So I just wanted to use that example because oftentimes as a school district, whether it's the media, whether it's our own internal organizations or our partnering organizations, people may have a different expectation of what education can and should be and how we should go about the practice that we are. And as a board member, it might be very easy to hear some of those concerns about why do you have individuals that are working remote or hybrid or what the case is. But I think one of the commitments that we made as a team of our staff and our board was how we make decisions and how we measure success and what we focus on in an organization are student outcomes based on the measures that you've decided, not the practices that some people may favor over others, and get engaged in that conversation. So I just wanted to take that time to reiterate kind of some of that presentation from last week, because I do think it's important for us to always be able to go back to our why and make sure that we're engaging the conversations that we matter. There are two significant pieces of board item agenda today that I wished was on the front page of the news. I wish the front page of the news talked about the mental health services that we were going to be able to provide in partnership with a fantastic therapeutic service provider for our students at the Explorer Academy, and how as a public school district, we are able to integrate through co-located services, treatment needs for students in addition to their academic needs. I think that would be a fantastic front page article for our organization. I think that result monitoring around our communications and our partnership and whether or not that's leading to the outcomes that we want for our students, that's a significant piece of front page information because that is related to the outcomes that we want to produce as an organization. So as we move forward, I just, again, I'm going to implore you and keep going back to why we make the decisions that we do, why we employ the practices that we do, and go back to what are the measures that we want to use to define our success as an organization, so you have that clarity if you have those questions as well. And that is it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gandhi. Any comments or questions for Dr. Gandhi? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, next I would move to our consent agenda and look for a motion to approve. Yes, Ms. Gullickson?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
All right, moved by Ms. Gullickson and seconded by Mr. Clark. Any discussion? Oh, yes, thank you.
Jim already added it to our consent agenda.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I guess point of order, do we need
Do we
to
need to
mention it
reiterate?
again?
You added it at the beginning, so you're okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, thank you very much. Motion carries. We will move on to our business section, starting with 7A, which comes to us through memo number 113, the award of proposal for the Mental Health Therapeutic Treatment Center. And Dr. Gandhi, I would look to you to introduce this for us, please.
Thank you. As discussed in the previous board meeting, we took an item that would traditionally be a consent agenda item, which is an award of proposal for a mental health therapeutic treatment center, and made it a business item today so we can have a presentation and also allow the board for some Q&A and discussion around the mental health therapeutic treatment center at Explorer Academy that we are looking to employ starting next school year. So your memo is very procedural in just terms of the award of bid, but this presentation is to share more about what that service looks like. I know there's some questions around the non-public school, and I think we'll answer to the best that we can. We're also figuring some of that stuff out as we go, but hopefully the focus of this conversation can really be about why we're doing what we're doing, the services that we're trying to provide, and what that model really looks like. So we have today with us Katie Coughlin from Nexus Path, and I'm going to let her start and just share a little bit about some of the conversations we did in this RFP process we did before making a recommendation of which vendor we did do an interview, and had some great conversations. We were able to flesh out some of those information. I thought that'd be important for you as a board to be aware of as well. So without further ado, I will let her talk, and then we're open to any questions for this business item.
Good evening. I'm Kate Coughlin. I'm the Executive Director at Nexus Path Family Healing. And we serve children and families throughout the state of North Dakota in a number of capacities. Many of you, if you're longtime North Dakota residents, may be familiar with Nexus Path as a treatment foster care provider within the state of North Dakota. In the last decade, we've expanded our services into mental health care that's more targeted at clinical services, not just related to foster care in the child welfare system. We have been involved with school-linked mental health services for the last number of years in the Fargo district, providing case management services that link children who are utilizing medical assistance, so North Dakota MA, to a case manager that can help them and their families navigate the mental health system. And so that's been a smaller project that we've been doing in primarily Title I schools throughout the district up until this point. That service has provided us with an opportunity to do crisis management, embed mental health providers into different schools for certain days of the week to support the therapeutic needs of children. We've been able to do debriefing services, assist with the educational process for children and their families, provide crisis therapy, mental health education, and try to attempt to destigmatize mental health care in our community, and provide skills integration to youth within their home and their school, and do family systems work that allows for families to have better holistic care when it comes to the mental health needs of their children. We saw the RFP. We were lucky enough to be currently working with the Fargo Public Schools in our psychiatric residential treatment facility, Luther Hall, here in town. And that's a 16-bed facility that serves children who are at a high level of acuity with mental health needs. It's a step below inpatient hospitalization. And so Fargo Public Schools has been a longtime partner for us in that environment, and we were informed that there may be an RFP forthcoming, and we were eagerly awaiting the opportunity to revamp and revitalize how we provide mental health care to students in the Fargo Public Schools in a way that was innovative and creative, wraparound, and holistic, and involved families and involved the school itself. And so when we got the RFP, we were thrilled to be able to provide a response to that, and then to be able to be interviewed and potentially offered the award for that has been an honor. I came prior to being at Nexus Path from the state of Minnesota, where I did an incredible amount of work in school-linked behavioral health. Minnesota has a really well-rounded model that the state government provides grants and opportunities for funding. And so this is a model that is very similar to what I had been doing across the river. And what this model really consists of is having a therapist or therapists, depending on the number of children that we're supporting, and skills integration workers working alongside teachers and paraprofessionals and school staff to ensure that the mental and behavioral health needs of children are being addressed in real time, so that kids aren't having to go to therapeutic appointments that pull them out of class. They're not having to families aren't having to navigate a system where maybe they don't have transportation to be able to attend a therapy appointment, where the skills integration work can really be provided if a child's having a crisis in a classroom or in that environment where there's real-time work being provided. So this model is really focused on serving the highest need youth and the most vulnerable families, because the mental health system is incredibly complex for families to be able to navigate. And if you're not familiar with it, it's even more cumbersome. Transportation for youth is one of our key components, because we realize that parents have to work. And we know that there's a lot of times where they're going to have to make a choice between, can I get my child to this thing that they desperately need? So let us help you help your child. Supporting the learner both in and outside of school. So doing not only therapeutic work with the child in the school environment, but doing family-based work, because mental health and behavioral health needs don't just happen in a vacuum to that child. It happens to the entire family system, and the family system must be given skills and support to be able to navigate the needs of their child. Doing year-round services. It's really important in the mental health care field as a former clinician to not have stop-outs of care, because children and families make progress in the therapeutic environment. And when you have a 3 or 4 month gap, some of that progress is inherently lost. And those are skills that can help to move a child into a less restrictive environment or move a child along their own path. And also it helps that family system stay intact and avoid CPS involvement. It keeps kids in homes. We give families skills, we give them support, we give them therapy. Kids are more likely to stay in home and not be in an out-of-home placement. One of our things that we do in our school-based mental health is we have 24/7 on-call services. A lot of times, there's long weekends, there's breaks from school, and children might be struggling. Families need somebody to contact that knows their child, knows their child's mental health needs, and can help be responsive to that. It's a key cornerstone for us because we don't want families to feel like they're on an island when they're struggling with something that's really critical. Obviously, our work is very data-driven. We operate in best practices and evidence-based practices, utilizing cutting-edge strategies and therapy modalities. We utilize the CANS with it, which is a quarterly needs and strengths assessment. So really looking at the child from what their needs are as well as what their strengths are, and helping that to drive our treatment planning, which treatment planning will then drive skills work and will drive the family skills work. So it's a really comprehensive process. We utilize all the standard mental health screenings and assessments. It's, as a mental health professional, you know, it's pretty common vernacular for us to use those things. For this model, our goal is to have a case manager, which would be a social worker, and our therapist in the Explorer Academy in a non-public school, which, as Dr. Gandhi mentioned, we're still navigating how that's going to work. We got a lot to learn about this non-public school thing. And so we're excited to engage in it. My Associate Executive Director, Dr. Tanya Graywind, is really familiar with the educational system in North Dakota and has already been in early talks with the state about how we establish a non-public school at Explorer Academy.
Great, thank you so much. Questions from the board? Yes, I think I saw Ms. Christensen first.
I move that we accept the proposal of Nexus Path Family Healing for a mental health therapeutic treatment center at Explorer Academy at a cost of $13,788.96 per month for 20 students for the 2024-25 school year, and issue the contract accordingly.
Accept, yes. I'll second it.
Didn't hear that. Thanks, seconded by Ms. Day.
Yes.
All right, and then let's move by Ms. Christensen and seconded by Ms. Day. Let's move to discussion or any questions. Yes, Ms. Gullickson.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. I do have a question. I'm hopeful you can answer. I know it's not a piece of this puzzle, but I'm wondering, since you are working with the students, are there additional paths you can take to help support the family who's supporting that student as well? Because I love the idea of keeping the kids in their homes with their families.
So prevention-based services, which is Title 4E in the state of North Dakota, has a number of opportunities for us to engage families, both with commercial insurance as well as state-funded medical assistance. So we have pathways developed already where we'll be able to do family systems work in home, in the school, if the parents want or guardians want to be in that environment as well. So yeah, we're well-versed on that and intend to utilize that because it's a primary prevention strategy to keep kids out of placement.
Wonderful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Holden?
I just have a question. I don't know, maybe this might be directed towards Dr. Gandhi, just based upon this, how specific this motion is. What's the flexibility, the 20 students, is there flexibility if there's another student that needs that service, or what? I just need some clarification on why such a specific number in case there's a change within students that need the service.
Yeah, I would say that this is step one of a set of processes that we are trying to employ in our district. I'll come back to your question in a second because I'm going to let Namal ask, and then I have a question for her that can maybe draw some conclusion onto why we're specific to 20 students because of what we're trying to do. But the goal is to expand down the road. But I think the first piece is that we are trying to use this model to show that there's a difference between academic accommodations and treatment. And we are sometimes over-identifying students for special education because our educators don't have any other tools at their disposal, when in reality, they don't need a special education accommodation to access their grade level curriculum. They actually have a treatment need. And so for that reason, we're gonna start at the Explore Academy. But what the model that we really want to employ down the road is hopefully get to a point where as a district, if we can identify that students have a treatment need, then they never have to go down the path of being on an IEP to begin with. Because if you have a cognitive or neurological disability that may result in some pieces that need treatment, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have an academic deficit that needs to be accommodated. So can we identify and do a better job of recognizing that some of the students that we may have qualified in emotional disturbance from the academic side was really because we had no other avenue when those students needed treatment. So we're gonna start with the students at the Explore Academy first. I think one of the questions I asked during the interview was, the reason that we're creating this non-public school is that would it be possible that if we identify that treatment's working for a student, that their IEP may no longer be relevant? And the answer is yeah, absolutely, that's where we wanna get to. So one of the reasons that we're creating this non-public school is what if there is a student that needs treatment but doesn't need an IEP? The Explore Academy is an IEP place determination for a setting D facility. So I don't want every student to have to go under the umbrella of special education when in reality they just need a treatment service that can be diagnosed and treated. And that's why the non-public school will allow us to be able to provide that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I remember having discussions on the overall goal, but thanks for specifying the number.
Yes, Ms. Nelson?
So we've worked really hard with legislatively with the crossover of Medicaid billing versus in the public school system. Does that affect this relationship at all?
It's one of the reasons why, again, we want to have this relationship. It all kind of goes back down to role clarity and what is the purpose of education and special education versus the treatment need. And because that is not clearly defined in society or in our culture, I think sometimes we expect educators to provide treatment, or we think that good quality instruction or the educational environment that we can create is going to provide the mental health treatment that students need. And there's two challenges with that. On the billing side, we as a school district are very limited in what we can bill because we are not physicians, we are not treatment providers. And then secondly, like I've talked about, it results in that over-identification. Like one of the questions that I had asked during our interview was, of all of the youth that you have worked with in the past, if you had to generalize, what percentage of the diagnosis could have been prevented with better, you name it, family structure, tier 1 instruction, the best teachers in the classroom? And I believe the response was that 95% of those students would have received the diagnosis as it is. And what that shows to me is that we are asking educators to keep working harder on something that's not in their realm when the student needs treatment. So we need someone that can provide treatment to students and can bill beyond just the 2 or 3 codes that we as a school district are allowed to bill to, and someone that's actually a physician and a healthcare provider, not an educator trying to play that role with the limited billing that we have.
So summation of that is I think it's very important for our GAC to also watch Health and Human Services, because there is definitely a crossover there. And we worked really hard on billing within the K-12 public education system.
Absolutely.
Other, yes, Ms. Day?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Barkland. Kate, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. I would really love it to see the PowerPoint presentation, because sometimes, it's good, it's best that, we have that. I like to see the visuals. So even though you say all the information that I love to hear about mental health, that you put them in there is so crucial for me. It's not the first time that I heard about the past or the next, what is it? Sorry. About the Next Path family healing for mental health. I have worked with them before, and they were amazing, because of the fact that, they're so crucial. They are in the communities, helping all background with all walk of life. They even came to the event, one of the individual who's working with the students, they came to Condell Internationals youth event for mental health. You know, that's how I knew about it. And I don't know if I met with you, Kate, but I know one of your worker did came to my office and discuss about, you know, like the next event or so forth. That's how I know about it and how crucial they are, you know, in our communities. So to me, when I read this, I said, why not? You know, because mental health for our children, it's so important. You know, if we do not talk about it, who else going to be talking about it? And first and foremost, family come first in Fargo Public School. We shouldn't let things like this go. So to me, when Katie accepted it, I was like, okay, good. She did a good job. But I just most of it, I'm not trying to question you or anything, but I just want to say thank you. So I think that everybody did the questioning already that I wanted to ask too as well. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, Ms. Campbell, could you please call the roll for us?
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Berkland.
Yes, motion passes, and we'll move on to our next item of business, our community and outreach communications monitoring, which comes to us through Memo 114. And Dr. Gandhi, could you please introduce this for us again?
I will, and I'm gonna just kick it off and then give it to, I believe, Missy, and then I believe it'll go to Anne Marie from there, just to give you a brief preview. So, for your approval tonight, we have result monitoring for Strategic Initiative 4, Community Outreach and Communications Monitoring. Going back again, one of the reasons that we are doing the Unified Strategic and Operational Plan moving forward is to be more concrete of how we measure progress and have very specific key metrics as an organization that we want to work towards, because sometimes the ambiguity is tough, and this is a good example of some of that as well. You know, in our traditional practice, like going towards this new development of the new plan that's been approved for next year, there are a couple things that we recognize. Like one of the results in this cycle of communications was one of the results that was citizens of Fargo will have a positive opinion of the school district. That is really hard to qualify and quantify and demonstrate reasonable progress, and that's like that ambiguity. It would allow us in a traditional practice to show a variety of different data points, right? And then I think there's also a different piece in terms of what is the expectation for communications? When you use that term holistically and broadly, I think sometimes there's a gap, because what we saw and what I demonstrated last week through our employee engagement survey was there was a gap in communications in terms of identifying decision-making, input on PD, and so forth. That's a little bit different than some of the measures that we are using for our communication team that are looking at the methodology of communication and the processes we utilize, like looking at our social media engagement, looking at the consistency in our school newsletters and different pieces. So I think one of the pieces that we're really looking forward to as we move forward is that clarity of what is going to be coming forward in the new plan as we look at those very specific measures that we're going to work towards, so then we can all kind of be on the same page. Earlier today, I did send the board an email of the data from our 2023 May survey. To be honest, we probably should have included it in your result monitoring packet. We just didn't, because it was administered May of 2023. Our communications team took the decisions from that survey, and we made whatever changes we thought were appropriate for this school year, and it's almost a year old now. We didn't give a communication survey this year, and we didn't do it because this year we've also surveyed more than we have previously. We're doing our second climate and culture survey that's open right now. We're just coming off a human capital survey, and some of those already have questions embedded on communications as well, which I think we covered at the last meeting. So I think that's one of the reasons we didn't include it, but I fully recognize that that data should have been included, because although it may not be as applicable now, almost 12 months later, it was in between the two monitoring cycles, and that's why I sent that email to the board, so you have that data from that survey. Like you'll see, a lot of that survey data was just some information on methodology for communication, how our staff or parents engage or where they take information, and also identified some different needs, right? There were some pieces that focused on wanting to do more forums, more in-person engagement, that we are taking that data as well. Obviously, the most important data that I know that I've used this year, because I pulled it up at 2 a.m, or Anne Marie did for me, was on when parents want to be notified for snow decisions and some of those other pieces as well. So that data was used, but we didn't include it in the report just because honestly, it was almost a year ago and we didn't think about it, to be honest. So that's why I included that later, but I am also looking forward to some more clarity and very specific outcomes that we want to move forward when we do this report monitoring next year. And I think that also applies to the other result on our partnerships, because partnerships are hard to quantify, or the impact of a partnership is hard to quantify. And one of the biggest changes that you'll see moving forward in this strategic initiative is that instead of just saying we want partnership to expand opportunities for kids, it's very concrete in terms of which opportunities those are, even with dual credit. Like, where do we want to go with dual credit? If it's specifically in the teaching profession, tracking the amount of students that are taking dual credit classes related to teaching. And I think that's going to drive a lot of our decisions moving forward. I think one of the pieces that, unfortunately, where we are as an organization, the limitations that we have with being funding and as a public entity, I wish we could, but we can't offer free dual credit opportunities for all of our students, right? But I think a conversation for the board down the road will be, if this is an important measure for us, then at least for these specific metrics, is that a dual credit opportunity that we as a district want to invest in to not limit that access for some of our students, if those are the outcomes that we monitor. So I think that's where those level of granularity moving forward and having that concrete and narrow focus is going to be helpful. So that's just kind of a high level of some of the changes as we look at to next year, and a little bit of explanation of our result report from this year. But for the more specific data monitoring, I will hand it over to Missy to talk about the partnership result, and then Anne Marie.
Yeah, it'll be both Bob and I to go through some of those pieces on the partnership, since many of them are secondary. But I wanted to share with you that this past fall, we did our first partnership with Valley City State. And we had their junior level students who plan to be teachers in Kennedy and Lincoln. And so about 25 at each building. And then they had their classes on site with their Valley City State professors twice a week. They did practicum work in our buildings. They could sub if they wanted to on their days off. One thing that we tried to do, because we know this is the next generation of teachers, is we told them they could have access to experts, and so in their classes. So I went and spoke, Leanne has spoken, Jeff went and talked about hiring and recruitment for teachers to the groups. And so it took some time for us to kind of get those collaborations to happen, but it was really neat to see just the questions they ask and how dedicated they are to students, students in there. The buildings talked about when the practicums were done, then these students started signing up to sub in their buildings. So when they're comfortable somewhere, then they end up there also. So now they're hoping, there's a few teachers that did their practicums who are asking a student teach back at their buildings. And that is also good for Fargo. We do share this wonderful partnership with West Fargo, and we alternate every other year. And so next year will be in West Fargo, and then it'll be back. But again, when we can be right alongside the professors, and when I was able to do a debriefing with the professors from Valley City State, they found it powerful also to be able to teach them 1 hour and let them go the next hour and watch it happen. And so they just felt the closer they can be to those situations, the better. I thought it was very successful. There are things that we learned, like when you have 25 more cars gonna park at your building, you know, some of those pieces, or where does everyone put their lunch? But those are really small things compared to the partnership with the teachers. And I have to thank our teachers who participated, because we made sure everybody had a teacher mentor as we went through that process. And so I don't know if Jeff is on, because he also spoke to them, but he was in partnership as we went through this year.
Yes, ma'am. If I may add, Madam President, Dr. Gandhi, members of the board, this partnership really allows the opportunity for these students to co-teach, co-design, and co-work, and really get a chance to take the methodology that they've learned and the pedagogy that they've learned and put it into practice. So Missy and Bob have done an amazing job starting this, and we've enjoyed supporting it.
Yes, Ms. Nelson.
Before we proceed, Missy, can you explain the relationship between VCSU and NDSU? Because I think a lot of people don't understand that VCSU oversees NDSU's education program.
Okay, Bob might have to help me with that. How I know it is that Valley City State University, they handle our elementary graduates, and NDSU monitors our secondary. And so you're right, but they are in partnership because our Valley City students also sometimes take their courses at NDSU.
Correct.
So it is a combination on there. And I'll turn it over to Bob, though, for some other partnerships that have been pretty powerful in our district.
So I guess really I just would like to draw your attention to page 4 of the report. And there's a long bulleted list of additional partnerships that Fargo Public Schools has ventured into. Some do center around our post-secondary institutions, from college preview days where students have the opportunity to explore and learn a little bit more about those post-secondary schools, to our Careers on Wheels, where we have 35 different business partners who come in and present to our students to share with them ideas. And a lot of times this is for our middle school students so that they can build some of their career aspirations and thinking. To the Home Builders Association that worked with our 10th grade students and in conjunction with other industries provided healthcare and technical and trade industries so that students could see those connections as well. And then we've partnered with the Chamber of Commerce to provide what we call summer adventures, which is for our staff, so that sometimes our staff can get into some of the businesses in the community to see what skills our students need so that they can help shape what happens in the classroom as well. So that's just a few of the things that are listed on page 4, but just a few I wanted to highlight.
Thank you, Dr. Gross. Yes, Ms. Tate?
I would like to accept the reasonable progress has been made on R-SI-4 for 2023-2024 school year.
I just want to hold that. Ms. Campbell, were you going to present any?
Yes, but did Seth just second it?
Okay, all right. Okay, so moved by Ms. Day and seconded by Mr. Holden. Any other discussion? Yeah, and we still want to hear from, yes.
I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to. Happy to share. Yeah, so obviously you had the report in advance, and happy to take any questions about some of the data points and whatnot, but just want to overview a few things as well. As noted in the key accomplishments section about the communications team, we have been able to expand our team this year to work on adding video as a tool in our tool belt. Page 18 overviews the listing of published videos as of this report. And of course, we're working on more. We have a variety of videos that either have been launched since we got this out to you or are forthcoming about our self-directed academy. Obviously, we are starting to enroll students for that for next year. And it is hard to share with people about a program that doesn't exist yet. And so those videos are going to hopefully help explain that to our community a little bit better. Additionally, we are working on some videos on our Trolled Mentorship program. Similarly, it's hard to share about a program that has yet to be launched. And so we have some good videos that we're working on to share with our community about that program as well. We have a variety of others in the list on our listing for the future or currently in the works. So we're excited to get those out and shared. As you'll see in some of those data points, we are seeing an increase in social media followers, if I could speak tonight, which just helps us share information with our community. We're also seeing an uptick back, a rebound, if you will, in our news releases, having news releases to share out about things that are happening in our buildings, and also watching that coverage rate by our local media. Also, as a team, we're really tracking and reaching out to our buildings to make sure they're remembering to share those items with us, and also sharing items that are happening in their buildings so we can include that in our newsletter and then also out to social media as well. One more celebration, if you will, you'll note that, of course, we've shared many years with you our listing of awards that our team has received for the things that we do. The listing in there includes the NDPC awards. All first place awards at NDPC goes on to the national competition. We received a note last night that we know that our first place awards from the state level that forwarded on to the national level, we have placed at the national level. We just won't know until June. So kind of fun to find that out. A little happiness in the day that we do have some other awards coming our way. As we include in these reports too some challenges, we'll share, as it's noted in the report, one of the biggest challenges for our team this year is the website. I mentioned this last year in the report as well. Our website company in 2022 was sold to another company. And they are making our back-end system the dinosaur, so we are having to process over our whole website, at which we've maintained since 2015, to a different backend. That hasn't gone perfectly well, not in the way that our team has wanted. We wanted to have been rolled over to our new system by now. Unfortunately, we are not. We have an aggressive goal to get that done sooner than later. So we are very hopeful that we can do that by mid-May. It is taking a significant amount of time. The migration process of the content was not done the way we thought it was going to be. So it's taking a significant amount of staff time to go in and get that website ready to launch. We are having to go over every single word, every single link, every single file, and making sure that it is where it needs to be, that things are linking appropriately, that we're ready to go. So that has been a significant lift for our team, and we're really dedicating a lot of effort right now to finalize that, because at this point we're maintaining 2 websites. So if we update it over on our live site, we have to go and update it on the one that's waiting to go. So note that is taking a significant amount of time. Also, what I'll tell you is, while, as noted in this report, because we had just redesigned our website, this is a replication, as they call it. So when we roll over, the website will look pretty much the same. There'll be some slight tweaks, of course, because it's on a different system. However, it will be on a different server, okay? And so if you yourselves, our community, teachers, staff, have websites bookmarked, if you have things favorited, or maybe you have a link to a policy, most to all of those links will change because they're no longer on that server. And that might cause some hiccups for us for a while, right? Even our buildings, we're gonna have to remind them, oh, that newsletter that you might just use that same article year after year, if it's linking to maybe a policy or something online, that link most likely won't work anymore, because everything's going to be directed a different way. So that's going to impact us in a lot of different ways. So for example, even like our newsletters we send out, they link back to things on our website. Most all of those links will be dead. So that's just a precursor of something that's going to come for us, which it is what it is, but it might take some time for everyone to get used to that, and then also, updates and corrections that are gonna have to be made. So again, a very large challenge for us, but we're hopefully will be launched and rolled over to the new system very soon. So if anybody has any questions, happy to answer those, or if any cabinet member has something else they need to share.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Nelson?
Quick question, Anne Marie. Was this unexpected update to our website included in the original operations plan?
For this year, yes, because we knew going into this year that we needed to do this. When we originally worked with the company, we planned the project to start like last summer, and we wanted to be rolled over and launched on the platform's called Composer in February. We actually had a goal of February 9th specifically. As soon as we obtain our project manager, she informed us, well, that will never happen. And we got a new timeline, which was going to be March, and it's April. It's been difficult. Some of my cabinet colleagues know it's been a difficult process. We've been needing to work with the company in ways we weren't planning to make this happen. We've had to push back a little bit on some answers we've gotten, so some of the portions of our website weren't developed the way they needed to be. So after we went through the design phase and development phase, and now we're trying to get to implementation, things aren't working correctly. I could get into more technical things, but we've just really had to spend a lot of time to try to get it to a functional stage and then also an accurate stage before we launch.
Well, speaking from personal experience at a much smaller level, your experience is not uncommon. So thank you for the extra lift, because this happens often. So
It's not something we want to do often either. We do have a motion and a second for discussion. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Christensen?
Thanks. Thank you, Anne Marie, to your comms team. I thought that even before hearing all this extra stuff that you shared here, that in the report, it's very obvious that our communications team here is quite fabulous. And also, I want to just echo what Missy said. I was able to observe the VCSU students when I was visiting Kennedy one day, and it was phenomenal just to see them interacting in that environment. And I'm curious for Missy and Bob, do you know, is there ever like a secondary opportunity, like an opportunity for secondary college students to have something like that?
So at this time, we don't have a program where they would take their courses here on campus, but we do work very closely with both practicum and student teaching placements and try to foster that as much as we possibly can to get more students into our schools, to encourage them to then be employed with the Fargo Public Schools once they are done.
Yeah, I hear that. So my background is in education, and as being a former education student, I didn't study elementary ed, so it was cool to see them, but looking back on it, I think it would have been a really cool experience as a student to be able to be in the building more.
Yeah, other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Clark?
So you guys will have to bear with me because a lot of my questions are kind of more about what's not necessarily in the memo 114. A lot of it will come from the supplement, I guess we can call it, the email that we received earlier today. And so I think regarding the communication survey from 11 months ago, I think the analysis was good. I went through the survey results myself, and I think a lot of the conclusions and common themes that were picked out of it were pretty much exactly what I got out of it. For those who did not get that email that was provided to the board, I'll quickly recap the themes. Themes were wanting more opportunities for engagement, increased transparency, desire for more in-person communications, and wanting to see communication as more in the form of a two-way street instead of just us as administration or a board communicating to people and not necessarily getting communication back to us. And so I think the question, I guess two questions. So there were recommendations in the document that we got after the analysis, and I think the recommendations fit the analysis. And I guess the first question I would have is what actions were taken in the last, 10, however many months since we got the data, what actions were taken to act on these recommendations? And I'll ask the other question I have also. The climate and culture survey that we discussed just a few weeks ago, I've had the time to comb through the open-ended responses that we received from staff and parents and students. And though the open-ended questions were not communications related, they didn't prompt them to discuss communication. A lot of them still did. When asked, what do you like least about our school? Or what's one suggestion you'd like to offer to improve our school? Communications was still mentioned a lot. And so in May, we got survey results that highlighted some potential issues with communication. We've had, a year, and then the climate and culture survey we just got still kind of shows that may be a lingering issue. And so why might our data still show that, and what actions have been taken for the recommendations that were drawn?
Dr. Gandhi?
I'll start with some of those pieces because I kind of touched on that, and Greg, I've been thinking the same thing. I think one of the things that I've recognized during the last couple of rounds of surveys is that maybe we, as an organization, need to start separating also like communications and then engagement, because a lot of what I heard is, and this is kind of what I talked about last time too, both from the human capital survey, the climate and culture survey, is that I don't know if necessarily the problem is communications. I think now that we have more clarity in terms of what is expected from Strategic Initiative 4 here next year, you'll see more specific measures that we're going to work towards. Those are our mechanisms and our methodology for communication, because those are the measures that we identified. But I think that not Anne Marie and her team, not Strategic Initiative 4, I think everyone in the organization needs to own more of that engagement piece. I think that now here's me going back into my 5 why analysis and some other pieces, but I think that one is that we haven't had that lack of clarity or that North Star in our organization of like, how do we do decision making? So when I talked about the gaps in engagement, sometimes the gaps in engagement are not because we haven't created those opportunities, but it is also because people landed on a different piece, knowing that there wasn't a guiding principle on like how are we ultimately going to determine which decision's the best. And without that, you're always going to feel like you're not heard, right? And I do think that that's a piece of it. But specifically, what else can we do? We talked last week, or the last board meeting, one of those big themes on not being heard was around teacher and teacher professional development. I know our teaching and learning team are going to work on that too, but even in conversation with Dr. McCann, and I mentioned this at the last board meeting, is that we have a variety we have a variance in data from the surveys that we give initially after a PD, and then the surveys that we're giving kind of at the end of the year too. So I think there's some work there that we want to dive a little bit deeper into. Do you see the value of the professional development that's provided to you immediately after that's been provided to you, or after time of implementation and in the classroom, and being able to see some of those pieces? I think we need to collect that data to dive a little bit deeper into seeing where people aren't being heard. But I also think that we need to do just more of involving our educator voice at the table and doing more work by committee, right? Whether we try to use committee work a lot in terms of PD selection, in terms of the task force on middle school advisory, what we're doing with the FIA teachers with graduation, to bring those voices to the table. Will there always be more opportunities? Absolutely, but I think I'm hopeful that committing to more committee work, having a set guideline of how we make decisions and what the measures are that we're looking for, and having that uniform consistency will help with some of that engagement piece. I don't think today necessarily you would see different data automatically off of last May. I mean, I do think that we've made a lot of progress and we've done a lot of different things, but I think that our clients, whether it's our staff or our parents or our students, they still lump communication and engagement together. And I also think that they also lump, did what I share get utilized? And sometimes you're not going to feel heard if your decision isn't what the district ultimately goes with. So I think that requires ownership for all of us and all of our staff, and that's why I'm excited to have a universal set of measures that we're going to use to communicate how we make decisions moving forward. And I think it's going to be constant monitoring. I think people will always feel like there isn't some of that communication. One of the pieces that came up in the data analysis trend was just kind of that visibility and that direct interaction too, not just having email communication. This year has not been my strongest year in terms of being in the buildings. I fully know that and I recognize that. But I also know that last year I spent an entire month in a building, and when I do my December survey to some of our staff about visibility scores, it hasn't changed. So I'm still trying to figure that piece out. Are people saying that they're not feeling heard or that communication's a problem? Is that really because they don't understand the why behind the decision? Is it because they didn't get the decision, or is it because they're expecting something else? So I think it's going to continue being a growth area for us, but I'm going to bucket that under engagement and something that we all need to focus on, and not just make that the purview of the communications team, because I don't think that'd be fair to them or our staff either.
Yes, Mr. Johnson?
I'm going to take a little diversion and ball you out. If the board has to have their homework turned in on time for the board packet, I unfortunately logged off my computer at 9 o'clock this morning, and up until I walked into this room, I've been dealing with a medical facility. So I have not seen this report that got emailed out. Having a discussion about it is really unfair to me. So with that, I'm going to call previous question.
Does that need a second? Okay.
Second.
Okay. And Ms. Campbell, do we go straight into roll? Okay, thank you.
Just give me 1 second so I get my notes. Sorry about that. Thank you. Holden. This would be previous questions, so ending comment and moving right to a vote. Okay? Holden.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Clark.
No.
Day.
Yes.
Gullickson.
Yes.
Berglund.
Yes, motion passes, and we'll move on to our final item of business, which comes to us
President
through.
Berglund, we
Oh.
need to vote on the motion on the floor.
I'm so sorry.
please.
I'm so sorry.
So now you'll be voting on the motion.
On the actual motion.
Yep,
Okay,
which
I
was
apologize.
about accepting
Okay.
reasonable progress. Okay?
Okay.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Berglund.
Yes. Okay. The business motion carries. Now moving on to our final item, which comes to us through memo 115 for the 25-26 calendar. And Dr. Gross, would you please introduce this for us?
Absolutely, thank you very much. Attached to memo 115 is a draft calendar for the 25-26 school year that the calendar committee developed and came to consensus around. The committee was made up of 17 different members. So we had teachers, parents, principals, students, district office representatives, a representative from the FEA, support staff, and a school board member. What the committee did is they started with a foundation of information. The first was state statute and the current teacher contract. Along with that is any previous calendars that have been developed, the potential co-curricular activities, and then probably one of the more important pieces was the survey results from the parent survey that we did each year, or I'm sorry, every other year around the calendar. I did attach that to the memo so that you could see the results of that. It was shared with the community back in December, both in a Journey article and a School Talk article, so both for our staff and for our parents and community. In that article, I did ask, and we did find parent volunteers to be part of the committee, and then from there shared the different questions that were asked. Basically, two different questions. One is, how would you like the calendar to begin and end? So rank when you would like it to start, when you would like it to end. There is a data set for our parents, our teachers, our other district staff, principals, and then our students as well. And then also in that data set, what you'll see is the question, does your family want a week-long spring break built into the calendar? And again, data from all of those different groups are there. This data has been somewhat consistent every time we give the survey, although the one thing that has changed over the past few years is that second question around spring break. When we started giving this survey multiple years ago, that was closer to 50-50, yes or no. As you look at the data now, you can see the smallest percentage that say, yes, we do want that, is at 61%, and that's from our parents. We had a fairly good response rate from the survey. 1,400 parents, multiple staff members, and so on. So the committee used that data along with EL14, and I also attached EL14 to the memo for you. And again, that is just for the community members who are listening to this. It is the executive limitation that the superintendent may not create a calendar that doesn't do a set of things. And really the pieces that the calendar committee focused in on was 2A through G, and that defines the number of days we must have for student contact, all the way down to embedding 2 student makeup days, just in case we had bad weather. The committee met over the course of multiple meetings, and over those meetings developed from a blank calendar 3 different drafts. Those 3 drafts, once one was created, we paused. The committee went back and got feedback from their constituents groups. They came back and shared it, and we either modified, updated, or affirmed some of the decisions that the calendar committee had already made up to that point. At the last calendar committee meeting, the calendar committee did come to consensus around one draft. I forgot to mention, in our first meeting, we always say, what is consensus for our committee? So we actually define that collectively. And as a committee, we said when 80% of the members say we are at a point where we can move something forward, we are at consensus. On our last meeting date, we had 91% of the people present who said, yep, I feel comfortable supporting moving that draft to the board for review and approval. So we met that mark of consensus. So on the calendar, what you will see, we have color-coded a series of dates. The blue on the calendar, which is on page 2 of the memo, are our student contact days. There are 2 different shades of blue. One is first semester, the second is second semester. The green days are the professional development days that are built in. That is part of that EL14 and the master contract. The holidays that are listed that we cannot be in session either by contract or by state law, and then those storm days that are there. I think the calendar committee did a wonderful job coming to consensus, and with that, I just wanted to share this calendar with you and see if you had any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Gross. Ms. Nelson?
I'd like to move that the 2025-2026 school calendar be approved as presented, and then I have some questions.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Nelson and seconded by Ms. Gullickson, and turn it back to you. Thank you.
Probably more comments than questions. Thank you for being so receptive to parent and staff feedback. This is a great example, and I really appreciate the transparency and your advanced reports here, because it's pretty obvious that we're listening to our customers, if you will. The contents of EL14 will likely be legislated in the next session. So they are using policies like ours as model legislation because there's been some abuse about virtual instruction on snow days. So I think that we're on the right path here. So I really appreciate administrative foresight into establishing a policy that ensures that our students have in-person learning prior to defaulting to virtual. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, yes, Ms. Gullickson.
Thank you and the committee for your hard work on this. I've served on this committee a couple of times and I know it's no easy feat. A quick question, I don't see any half-days or early outs. And I was just curious, I know this was our first year of trying it. Is it too early to tell maybe? Was it not received well? Was it deemed not necessary?
So
Just curious.
Oh, thank you. That was one of the topics that was discussed near the end of our last series of meetings. And the committee really looked at everything from the impact it has on parents, the impact it has on staff, and then students as well. And the students spoke to that. And although we do have those early outs for this calendar and next, the committee said, let's try one without that. And again, it is built from the committee up, so that was part of the consensus building.
Very good, thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, I would just like to commend Dr. Gross for leading the committee. It was so clear that we were really guided by our foundational principles, and it was great, and so thank you. And again, there's a lot of different opinions, so it's very difficult to come up with one draft, but we did. All right, seeing no other questions or comments, Ms. Campbell, could you please call the roll for us?
Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Berkland.
Yes, motion passes, and we will move on to our board reports. Dr. Newman, may we start with you?
Sure, thanks. Since our last meeting, we've had a CEA meeting and a planning meeting. I wanted to share that I attended the North Dakota Association of Honor Society induction ceremony. That was very cool to see some of our juniors and seniors in our district being rewarded and recognized for all their hard work. And Missy Eisness and I actually attended a 2-day conference, or a summit, I guess it was, in Chicago, Illinois this past week. It was all about school health emergency preparedness and response. It was put on by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC. And I think we both really learned a lot about like the importance of local partnerships and trying to stay proactive instead of reactive in times such as that. And I was just really proud to represent our district. There was 2 representatives from each state there. So we were really proud to represent North Dakota. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Day.
Thank you. As she mentioned, CEA meetings, I had lunch with the students at Lincoln. Seemed like it's been like constant, so it's fun. So and then today I went to local government artificial intelligence training. It looked like training to me, so it sounded fun. Learning about EIs, and some are good, some are really scary, I would say, because it's once you put your information out there, it's a done deal. So be careful.
Thank you. Mr. Holden.
Let's see, on the 10th, we met as an ad hoc committee for the superintendent contract. After that, I met with James Hand to discuss the long-range facilities plan a little bit further because I was invited to the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association's meeting to answer questions about that plan. So I wanted to make sure I was up to speed. Let's see, I ended up having a meeting with Grant from the FEA on the 11th, governance on the 15th, and then I called into planning on the 16th, and then had that meeting with the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association later that evening. And I believe that is it since we last met.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Nelson.
Governance Committee also attended my board assignment C3 Tech Committee. One of the new highlights out of their center is having a sandbox, which is a giant sandbox for different heavy equipment. So that's in the works. And then also I served as a proxy for the Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, Cass County Leaders Roundtable, which talked really about legislative stuff for the next legislative session.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. I attended governance since our last board meeting and planning. Two things from the planning committee. One we'll probably be seeing at an up-and-coming board meeting. Had to do with the Bennett PTA having a donation to get a better sign for the school. But after an extended discussion, I think signage at the school is kind of like playgrounds. We really need to standardize it. We'll probably be seeing a motion to accept the gift from the Bennett PTA, but maybe encourage future PTAs to find a better thing to do than worry about brick and mortar. And Mr. Clark came up with a brilliant idea in my mind, and so I want to give the rest of the board members a little homework. The planning committee is looking at the standard of effort report, which we recently were given. And what we're really going to look for is there information there we're making our administration give us that really has no purpose any longer? And is there other information that we should be looking for that we don't have? So I would encourage you all to grab a copy of the last standard of effort report, go through it, and if you see something that you think is extraneous, doesn't really help us as a board, please send Greg or myself that note. If there's an area you think we should have more information on, please share that as well. Obviously, planning isn't going to make this decision in a vacuum. We're going to try and boil it down and bring it back for the board and administration for consideration. Probably the biggest thing since our last board meeting is we have the second director in the history of the SEEC. A contract has been offered to John Porter, who is going to be wearing a couple of hats, at least for the next year. He'll be under a 70% contract to be the exec director for the SEEC, but he currently is in charge of the Southeast, I'm going to get it wrong, Southeast Special Ed Consortium, I think. So there are two different school districts that are going to probably be buying a portion of his contract time, up to 30%. So we'll see how that works for the next year. And I'm just going to go on record right now, and obviously I don't know who the next board president will be, but somebody new from this board is going to have to be on the SEEC board because we have a locked and loaded spot on that board. I think I've served on it now for way too many years, and I don't know if she'd consider doing it, but I think Robin Nelson would be an excellent person to be the next person. But I'll leave that to the board president and the future board. And that's it from me. Oh, I forgot, it's less than 4 months to the picnic. The sooner you get door prizes, the more we'll have.
Thank you. Ms. Gullickson.
Thank you. As Seth had mentioned earlier, I served on the ad hoc committee for the superintendent contract. And then today I attended the AI symposium for elected officials. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Clark.
I attended planning on the 16th.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen.
I also attended the Superintendent Contract Ad Hoc Committee on April 10th. And then today, in celebration of North High's new track, I'm wearing my North hoodie. And I was at the track meet for a little while today, their very first ever track meet on their brand new track. And people were doing track stuff and people were cheering, and it was very busy, and it was very windy and very warm and sunny, and it was really just a delight to finally see that facility being used. On a blue track, blue and gray track. It was quite beautiful. I have pictures on my phone if you want to see.
Thank you. That is very exciting. So on Thursday, April 11th, I spent the afternoon at Fargo South High because the North Dakota Supreme Court was visiting the AP Government and AP Language classes, and then they went into the auditorium and heard an actual case being argued, and students got to come and attend. And I was so impressed with our students, and they're very insightful, very, very good questions, and it was clear that our teachers had prepared them for that. And it was a really remarkable experience, and it was very exciting to be there. And then on Friday, April 12th, I was back at South High, and I met with President Kraft from the FEA and then President-elect Laura Christensen, who will be the FEA president for this upcoming school year. On Monday, we had governance on April 15th, and then I also attended planning on April 16th. And then last Friday, I met with James Urlacher from the negotiations committee with the FEA and just talked a little bit informally about negotiations this year and upcoming. That is all I have. Our next meeting is going to be on May 14th. It is 7 p.m. and we are adjourned.